Hello there, welcome to the Smart Student channel. Happy whatever day it is you're watching this video. My name is Chelsea Seaburn and I have a question for you. How many of you have personally felt victimized by writing the introduction to an academic paper? Quite frankly, that's not actually a question because if you're watching this video right now, the answer is probably yes. But the good news is that I'm here to change this for you because I don't necessarily think most of us were taught the correct way to write a college level introduction. Sorry, Mr. Jameson, my high school English professor. Let's go, guys. And here we are. So first things first, if you haven't watched this video up here, I highly recommend watching it next because introductions and conclusions are two topics that are closely related and best understood together. By the way, this will be posted 3 days after this one, so watch out for it. But today, let's talk about introductions. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of my best recommendations for how to structure your introductions, I like to teach students this first, and that is simply to consider your audience. In other words, who is going to be reading your paper? And this is really good news because quite frankly, your audience is small, one person to be exact, and that person is your professor. And the thing is, by understanding this, we can use that little bit of knowledge to your advantage because this is how we can build that streamlined structure for writing your introductions and conclusions every single time. But now I want to touch on what I said at the beginning of the video when I said that I don't think students are necessarily taught the correct way to write a college level introduction. So for many of you, when you're in high school, whenever you learn about writing introductions the first time, how many of you can relate to being told that to write a good introduction, it needs to be catchy, it needs to be interesting, you need to hook your reader from the start? Basically, a good introduction is one that sells your reader right away, otherwise they're not going to read the rest of your paper. So here's the thing, considering your audience, your professor, do you think they're simply not going to read the rest of your paper if your introduction isn't mind-blowingly catchy? No. Quite frankly, this is not a YouTube video where your audience has the luxury to click away if they don't like what they see. Your professor is always going to read through your paper no matter what because it's their job to read through your paper. So to minimize the pressure that so many college students feel, I like to offer up a mindset change. From writing introductions based on this wow factor, it needs to be amazing, to writing smart introductions. Now let me explain. A smart introduction is simple. It's one that optimizes your professor's understanding of your paper. Why? Because they're your audience, and as your audience, they're reading your paper to grade you based on a rubric, and they're looking to see how you fulfilled your assignment instructions. Therefore, your introduction is a great place to demonstrate how you've effectively fulfilled those instructions for the first time. Think of your introduction and your conclusion as the end caps to your paper. Your introduction guides your professor into your paper while your conclusion draws them out. This is why it's most effective to learn about them together because it'll help your understanding. But let's move on. Let's get into the specifics of what you can actually write in your introductions. And I like to offer up 4 components that you can use no matter what paper you're writing. And by the way, your introductions are not limited to what I'm about to share. It's simply my best recommendation. So those 4 components are an opening statement, needed background information, a roadmap of your paper, and your thesis statement. Let's go ahead and break them down one at a time. Starting with the opening statement, and that is the first sentence to your entire paper, which that one sentence is usually where a lot of anxiety comes from because it's the start of your paper, therefore there's a lot of pressure around it. So let me relieve some of that pressure by saying that your opening statement should simply introduce your topic. And quite frankly, there's a lot of ways you can do this. The options are endless. You can get very creative. For example, your opening statement can be a thought-provoking question about your topic. It can be a startling statistic, maybe even a common misconception about your topic. Or perhaps an interesting fact. You can even quote an expert in the field centered around your topic. You probably get my drift here. The options are endless. Your opening statement is simply a statement that introduces your topic into the discussion. Now, let's talk about needed background information, and the key is the word needed. What I mean by this is you should only include background information or context on your topic that is needed to understand the rest of your paper. You do not want to include any information that serves no relevant purpose to the rest of your writing. So for example, let's say I'm writing a marketing plan for Apple's marketing plan. To start in my introduction, I might include background information on when the company was started, information about their startup, initial earnings, and so on and so forth, maybe even their company mission and vision originally. I'm not necessarily going to include a full autobiography on Steve Jobs. I might put in there that he is their co-founder, but that's it. Anything beyond that most likely doesn't matter to the rest of my paper, therefore it's not needed. And by the way, the appropriate amount of needed background information you should include really depends on the length and complexity of your paper. For instance, if I'm writing a short, say 2 to 4 page paper for Apple's marketing plan, I may not need to include that much, if any really, background information on the company of Apple. Now, let's say that we're a 20, 25, 30 page marketing plan, then it makes sense for me to do a deep dive into background information and providing context in the introduction for that paper. You'll have to use your discretion here for your own introductions, but remember the key word is needed. Now though, let's move on to the roadmap of your introduction. And this is my favorite way to teach students to structure their introductions and conclusions, quite frankly, because remember when I described the introduction and conclusion as the end caps to your paper, walking your professor in and out of your writing? This is where that becomes really apparent, because what you want to do here is guide your professor through the main objectives you're going to be discussing in your paper in a roadmap formation. In other words, you're going to list them in the order that you're going to write about them. Now, to be clear, you're not copying and pasting your objectives verbatim from your instructions. What you do want to do is pull the main keywords from your instructions and work them into a written sentence. And after you finish that, you've officially made it to the last piece in your introduction, which is where you will include your thesis statement. You see, your thesis statement is not your topic, to be clear. It's what you found out about your topic. And basically, what you found out, what you learned about your topic is generally developed, supported, explained through those main objectives in your paper, which is why your thesis statement fits beautifully at the end of that roadmap in your introduction. But that's officially it for today's video. By the way, if you need help with academic writing as a whole, I have a free webinar on that very topic coming up. I'll link a description to the registration page down below because there's a few dates and times, so you'll want to select the one that works best for you. But thank you guys for watching this video all the way through. I always appreciate your support. I'll see you in the next video of conclusions, which reminds me, I need to get back to work.